My name is Gerard Armand Powell. I was a high school dropout. I became a millionaire in my 20s. I understood how to make money. And when I turned about 42, I just sold a company for $94 million. And I had never been so unhappy in my life. And I was living on the East Coast, and I had about 5 houses, 2 planes, 20-some cars. I'd stacked some money in the bank, and I was terribly, terribly, terribly upset and unhappy with my life. And I didn't know why, because everything looked so good. And it had gotten so bad that I started doing Demerol, and I was injecting about 5 sticks a day of Demerol. And nobody could understand what was wrong with me, because I should have been the happiest guy in the world. I had a beautiful wife. I had 2 kids that were great. Just everything a guy could possibly think that they needed, I had. And I watched a television ad, and I wound up going to a rehab in Malibu, California. All of a sudden, my life started getting better throughout this process, and I thought it was just coincidental. But I watched it keep getting better and better and better and better. I went to Costa Rica and did some plant medicine. And during this journey on plant medicine, everything that I had learned was true. And I said, holy God, this is all true. That this universe is one, and that there's just love. And it was just overwhelming stuff. And the fact that it was true blew me away. So then I said, okay, now I see that the combination of this metaphysical teaching and yoga and quality food and plant medicine, they all had to be given at one place. And I thought, I'm going to do a center. And I went to Costa Rica and I bought a place, an 81-bed hotel, and converted it into this center. And I said, you know, we have to do this for more people. And spoke to Shiva Ray and asked her to bring her yoga in, and then got the best locally grown organic food, have that here, and have mud baths and all kinds of things that all lend themselves to having an experience where you can walk in one day and walk out 10 days later and be a different person. And that's what I decided to do with my life, because there is a shortcut to happiness, and that shortcut is the truth.
The sleeping mind of the people seemingly fell deeper into consensus trance. It was as if the innate pattern recognition and problem-solving faculties of human consciousness were missing a critical ally, one that had been with us since the dawn of modern intelligence. It seemed that the propaganda campaign had worked. Then, in 1990, Rick Strassman, a medical researcher specialized in psychiatry, applied for a federal grant to give dimethyltryptamine to volunteers to simply see what the effects might be.
Well, so there was a group in Germany which got started around the same time, or sooner than I did, studying mescaline. But my DMT study was the first in the U.S. and the first that used DMT in quite a while. It was pretty frustrating. I never really expected to succeed, and I don't think many people did.
Public opinion of any mind-altering substance tends to evoke the belief that the experience is simply what happens when the brain fails to function properly, as if the default state most of us spend time in is the proper state to operate from. However, even if this were true, when someone's brain becomes dysfunctional and then hours later returns to normal, how would that individual explain the experience?
Well, I think the most sort of striking part of the research, and what I really wasn't expecting, was the sense of reality that people returned with. They felt the experiences were more real than real. The importance of the feeling of more real than real is we make our decisions based on what we believe is real. The outside world we're assuming is real, our inner world is real. And we make, decisions based on reality, inner and outer. So if there's a state that feels more real than real, then do we make decisions based on the information there?
Perhaps we should take a deeper look at the physiological effects of the chemical compounds in these plants that the government feared so much.
Classical psychedelics activate a type of brain serotonin receptor called the 5-HT2A receptor. And what that means in real terms is the cells become more sensitive. So what you're doing is really sort of ramping up the ability of these cortical cells to process information quickly and more effectively. There's an area in the brainstem called the locus ceruleus, the LC. It sends projections up to the cortex that release norepinephrine. And the locus ceruleus has been referred to as a novelty detector. So normally if you look at firing in the locus ceruleus, it fires in bursts, so it won't do anything, and then you'll see bursts of firing. So what happens is psychedelics increase those bursts. So we could imagine if those bursts correspond to the locus ceruleus detecting some novelty, then maybe it looks more novelty. And I've used the analogy when people take a psychedelic and they look at, say, a flower, it's as if they're seeing it for the first time. So it increases the sense of novelty.
What would be the biological purpose of these plants causing humans to see the world as if it's new again? It is a well-known phenomena to be looking for something like your keys while they're in your hand or right in front of you, but you don't see them. Your eyes have even spotted them, but you don't acknowledge that you've seen them yet. Our perception works in pattern recognition, and this allows the world to become predictable so we can find a rhythm to operate within. These plants and their effect on the detection of new information from old patterns may be the direct cause of neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. It has been shown that these serotonergic plants initiate the growth of new brain cells, as well as new neural connections and patterns to emerge. Let's think of this less as a causation and more of a correlation. Neurogenesis and neuroplasticity could be occurring when authentic childlike learning is happening. The neural growth seems to happen most in the hippocampus, which regulates emotions and is involved in memory. A Symposia.com article says new studies are showing that neurogenesis in the hippocampus, activated by psychedelics, might be a part of the acquisition of new behaviors and new pattern recognition. With proper setting, and skill, these changes in the brain may likely be why psychedelics have been so effective in treating post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression, where other treatments have failed.
But the possibility has to be considered that what the psychedelics are doing is retuning the receiver wavelength of the brain and actually allowing us to gain access to veridical alternative realities, parallel dimensions.
If Stan and many researchers are correct in positing that consciousness is not generated by the brain, but tuned into, what then are these psychedelic plants trying to show us?
Across the range of the psychedelics, you can definitely say that there is a broad range of imagery that is common. Not everybody will have all those images all the time. Not everybody will agree on every single aspect of it, but starts off with what are referred to as entoptic phenomena because they're considered as originating in the ocular system, where you start seeing zigzag lines and cross hatches and geometrical patterns, sometimes fantastically complex and elaborated mandalas appear in the geometry. Then there tends to be the sense of passing through a vortex of some kind into a seamlessly convincing parallel universe.
The Gaian mind. To many, this idea doesn't fit within the context we've been given by Western culture. How could the rocks be considered alive? How could the bones in our body be considered the same? What does alive really mean?
I mean, when you look what we have done to the Pacific Ocean, what we are doing to the atmosphere, what we have done to water, things like the Mexican Gulf or the reactor, from Chernobyl to the Japanese one. We cannot do this for a very long time. We might not make it as a species.
Near the center of the brain, we find a tiny pine cone-shaped gland, which may be one of the most wondrous parts of our physical body. We know that the pineal gland produces serotonin and melatonin, neurotransmitters which regulate waking and sleeping cycles, as well as playing a crucial role in mood. But it may also be true that the pineal produces DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, a neurotransmitter which creates a natural psychedelic state of consciousness. If so, then this little gland plays not only a crucial role in our psychological well-being, but it may hold the key for unlocking the true potential of humanity.
In this gland, there is floating water, a reservoir of water, with crystals that actually have piezoelectric properties. There's also another thing called piezoluminescence. If you have a little lighter and you hit the lighter and then you get that little spark that comes out, that's from a crystal being compressed. And as the crystal is compressed, it releases photons. In your brain, you have these little floating crystals that actually have that quality. And even better than that is there is another characteristic called piezochromism. Piezochromatic crystals are crystals that can release any color of light. Dimethyltryptamine is the main chemical that seems to do this. When DMT is chipped out of a tray that it was synthesized in, you hit it with a screwdriver, bam, you get these big bursts of colored light. Well, you have these little crystals floating in your brain.
DMT is this, dimethyltryptamine. It's what the theory is that it's what's released by the pineal gland that gives us these elevated states of insight.
Maybe DMT is the lens of our pineal gland, allowing us to see wider areas of reality than are normally accessible to our senses.
You remember that image of like a Buddha with the halo? There's always a halo around the Buddha's head, or Jesus. People say there's a cross behind him in that halo, but it's the beams of light. It's exactly what you can learn or remember to activate.
Many ancient esoteric traditions and mystical schools knew of the potential of the pineal. The ancient Greeks believed it to be our connection to the realms of thought. Buddhists know it as a symbol of spiritual awakening. In Hinduism, the pineal connects with the third eye chakra, the seat of intuition and clairvoyance. Jesus proclaimed that the eye is the lamp of the body, so then if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. If René Descartes is right, and the pineal gland is indeed the seat of the human soul, then these traditions are correct in believing that it serves as the connecting link between the physical and spiritual worlds.
How did they know about the third eye? Because each chakra connects in to an organ. So what fascinates me is the sixth chakra plugs into the pineal gland. The pineal gland has photoreceptors on it. And yet they knew that thousands of years ago before they ever knew that there were photoreceptors on the pineal. So that to me, it shows you that we know a lot more in the past than we even do now with our technology.
The pineal gland is lined on the inside with tissue called pinealocytes. These pinealocytes are similar to the rods and cones in the retina of your eye. That's right, it's the third eye. Your brain has a third eye in the center, and it has retinal tissue. It also has the same wiring as your physical eyes do to the visual cortex in your brain. How did they know that all the way back then? That would imply very advanced technology that would have been required for them to gain such incredible information about the brain. And yet they did. And so think about what that means. If you have little crystals that can vibrate and release all the colors of the rainbow, and people claim when they go out of body or have a near-death experience that they see a silver cord. There is a cord linking their astral body to their physical body.
Indeed, it appears that the pineal gland is our connection to higher dimensions, giving us access to the psychic and spiritual realms. If this is true, then humanity is upon the precipice of a greater awakening as a whole. But this awakening does not come without its challenges and oppositions.
It's well known that fluoride interferes with functioning of your endocrine system, the glands. These glands are